I have avoided Jesus. I have avoided talking directly about Jesus. I did a whole video asking questions like, is Jesus real? And then that entire video was just a bunch of experts basically saying, uh, we maybe it was a guy named Joshua, but he didn't do anything. There's no record of him. And that was both sides of the aisle. Then you had like a few people would say definitely there was no Jesus, and a few people that said, of course there's a Jesus. He was a guy named Joshua in Palestine. And that's kind of what we have. So I'm I'm gonna step out on a limb here and say there was a man named Jesus who performed every miracle written about in the book. I'm also going to say, like, when it comes to the Jesus you have in your head, that guy didn't exist. But I will say this, if you can understand what I'm about to tell you, because I am about to reveal to you the mystery of Jesus. It's called a mystery because the mystery is God became man on earth. Like that's the official church narrative is the mystery is how God through Jesus offered to Gentiles that which was only for the Jews, using Bible speak, which is not my thing. Now, what I'm going to tell you, if you hear me, if you're listening to me, should ruin your life. It should ruin everything you know to be true. It should make you question reality at its fundamental core. And when I tell you what Jesus and who Jesus and when Jesus was, it should break you. It should break you like a little child. It should break your brain. It should break your fundamental reality. It should just break you. So this is kind of a warning. If you enjoy your current worldview, you should just turn this off. Because what's going to happen next is I'm going to try to pull this out. Now, it's complicated, but it's simple. Like, the beauty of it, like, anything complicated is simple. That's how you know it's genius, because genius is like complicated simply. Now, I'm not saying I'm genius. Here's the thing I'm not saying anything. I'm simply going, this was written right here. I didn't write this. I didn't write this. I can't write this. Somebody wrote this down, and I want you to remember when they wrote this down because it doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. I'm about to tell you potentially nonsense. You should go, what the fuck are you saying? And I'm like, I didn't do this. I just noticed it. Every day I look around and I go, ever anybody else notice this? Somebody invited us to pick up Easter eggs. Or little kids to do Easter eggs, and I'm a good parent. I let my kids have free candy. And it doesn't matter the denomination, but it was a Baptist church. And before the Easter eggs, they felt the need to save our soul. Fair enough. Don't blame them. And it was an elderly lady, and she started going through the story. And I find it more and like when you see it, you're so screwed. She started saying the story, and all I could see was like, I could just see it. I can just, and you'll understand what I'm saying here in like 27 hours, however long it takes me to ramble through this. I could just see it. And it was just, every time I hear it again, I get another little piece and another piece, and it's just becomes so crazy that I don't know what to do with it. Something I know to do with this is to give it to you. Because if you get this, it's not just that it will ruin your worldview. It's that it will ruin your worldview. And if I can ruin enough worldviews, we can in fact understand this thing. The goal here is to fix the world and make it a much better place because, well, as you will see, this is your last warning. It's about to get fucking weird. The mystery of Jesus is a mystery because God became a man. Now, for all my videos, it's always the same premise that I have to start it with. And that is, whoever wrote this book, whoever wrote this crazy book, the Bible, let's step back even further. The Bible was written in Greek. Like, that's not debatable. This part of the Bible, right? So, fine, there's other languages, but the Gospels are written in Greek. That meant the people that wrote them thought like Greeks. It's just what it is. The Bible was made famous and spread to the level it has been by people who did not speak Greek, which meant they were not culturally Greek people. They were European people, by and large, doing the spreading, and then now globally, right? Christianity has become a global phenomenon, but it began its life as a Greek thought. And it became a European thought. And I've tried to make this point. That difference is profound. It's profound. It's huge. It's ginormous. You can't underestimate how big that problem is. We're not Greeks. We don't think like classical Greeks. We think like Europeans. We think like Germans. So let's begin. So there's a couple things happening. Number one is like the definitions of the words themselves, which you're not going to get anywhere. Why? I don't know. This is where it becomes frustrating because I can look into the world at popular movies, at books, and I can go, you guys are kind of flirting with everything I'm about to say. Like, I am not anything. I've said that before. I am not a Freemason. I'm not a none of these things. But it does appear that at least they somebody must have taught them. It seems weird. And it seems like they used to know. They have the infrastructure of the ideas in place and nobody knows anymore. So now it's just sort of like motifs, but they've lost hieroglyphics. At one point, everybody spoke, not everybody, people could read hieroglyphics. Then they couldn't. So when they discovered them, they went, oh, I don't know what this is. And then it took essentially two guys, but one guy, but two guys. All the universities, all the geniuses of the world, all the institutions got together and they were like, we're going to figure out how to read hieroglyphics. And they couldn't do it because they were stuck in their academic bullshit brains, right? They were like, they could only think how they were taught to think. But it took, there was two guys, but like one guy in particular just became obsessed with it and he spent 20 something years and he cracked the code. Him and the other guy, they kind of had like a rivalry and a partnership, it seems like. And then between the two of them, they figured it out. They didn't give a shit. They just figured it out. They didn't have anything better to do. That was the better thing they had to do. And now all the academics read this and they go, we're smart. We figured, two guys figured that out. It's true. You can look it up. Go find the story. I feel like it's something like this, where it's right here. Everybody knows the story, and that's the genius of this, but nobody knows what the meanings of the words are. So this whole entire little like rant I'm on is about the fact that when I start with the phrase God and man, that's huge if you don't understand what God and man means, right? If you're putting your German brain on it, if you're going literal with everything, you're done. It's over. We might as well not even, I should just turn this video off. There's nothing to talk about. But that's not who the Greeks were. The Greeks had a different way. And how do I know? Because I am the crazy guy who just studied hieroglyphics in his free time. I'm studying whatever you would call this, or because it's what I don't do the things, I do this thing. And I can, am I an expert? I don't know. What's an expert? I have a college degree in architecture. There you go. It has almost nothing to do with ancient cultural religious studies. But strangely enough, architecture is like the last classical degree floating out there. They actually spend 5 years training you to think. So, like, what architecture really is like abstracting and conceptualizing what it means to be a gas station. And, like, you have to go deep into all the things so that you can get your head around what it means so that you can begin to like create forms and functions and then you just have to learn to ask questions and ponder and like so strangely it's an unbelievably great degree for this level of what I do. Officially, I am not a classicist or a Bible scholar. I'm none of these things. But when I tell you this, you're like, oh, where'd you get that from? Like, I got it from the guys that wrote it. And how did I get it? I asked them questions and I listened to them and I looked at them and I listened to them and they told me everything. Just because you didn't hear it, because you are up your own ass, doesn't mean it's not true. Academics, Christians, atheists, all you people have preconceived notion. I have no preconceived notion. I don't believe in any goddamn thing. Because I don't believe in anything, I'm open to listen and think in new ways. It's the old way that has stopped, like, the rigidity of the Christian world has been so pervasive. And the backlash against the Christian world had been so visceral that either you were blind to anything but your Christianity or blind to anything but your hatred for your Christianity. Right? And both of those things have blinded everybody from just asking basic questions. Just basic questions. Like, why do we think God means what it means? What does it actually mean? What is a man? Why does this story make no sense? And why is it that you either have to just, it's cult thinking. You either accept nonsense and or you're out. And it's like, okay, I'm out. But I'm still going to go through this process. God, and I've said this, is the spirit of humanity. It's like on one level it's just humanity, but on the other it's like that essence of the spirit, like the thing, like when we're all worried about like humans and humanity and the value of life and like the like marrying your sister was wrong. Like, how do we know? Like, there's just like an innate, like, what is this like? How is it that I have consciousness, and how is it that I like to see people, and how like there's a thing that we can't, consciousness, both individual and collective. So in a sense, it's the collective consciousness of all people. It's humanity. And that collective consciousness has breathed life into all of history, right? What is history if not the lore, the story of people? And what are people if not like let's say the earth, it's going too far. It's so God is the collective consciousness of mankind itself. Something like that. Lives forever, gets kind of moody, it wants the best. It can get selfish, it can get evil, it can get good. It's the collective consciousness. Now, the Christian view is like God is this unbreakable thing, and that's kind of true, but as it comes into reality, as people, humankind goes through waves of, we can be destructive and we can be jealous and we can be loving. Like it's a spectrum. It's a person. Humanity is a if humanity is a person, it's God. That's God. So that thing is actually the father of Jesus. That's a little more sensible. And it was born of a virgin. And what is a virgin? A virgin is an unmarried woman who hasn't known another man. That just begs a couple of questions. What's a woman? What's a man? This is like my whole everything. That's the whole key to understanding much of this. So, a man, now I've actually kind of updated my man. I've been saying it's like the people, but that's sort of almost more God. So, I've had to kind of like get very specific. So, man ends up becoming more of like specifically the government, the people of the people in charge of a nation. So the nation, but more specifically the the leaders of the nation is man, like the government, the form in which it takes, the organizing principal people. So a government can be a monarchy, a government can be a democracy, a government can be an oligarchy. Like there's not, but those are all man. And that government usually has the name of the country, even though the totality of that name of the country includes the government and the people and the culture. And the culture is the woman. So Mary is a culture. Mary is a culture that hasn't had a husband. There hasn't been a nation or a government associated with this culture. So this culture was promised to another man called Joseph. Joseph is like John and maybe a couple other characters in the Bible where strangely you get multiple entities named Joseph. You got Joseph, the son of Jacob. You've got Joseph of Arimathea, who comes into play in the Jesus story. And you have Joseph, the betrothed of Mary. Now, I have said that Joseph always represents some form, and this is where the man comes in, of democracy, some form of republican people rule. Okay, you following me? Now, Mary is interesting. We don't even think about Mary, but Mary is like Joseph. You got Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary, the sister of Jesus, Mary Magdalene. Like, there's several Marys, several Marys, several Josephs, several Marys. Now, Joseph always represents Republican, democratic capitalism. That's just what Joseph is. Mary, and if you look up the definition of Joseph, it is like double anointing, double blessing. And Joseph is the child of promise, and Joseph is all kind of, he has dreams and a visionary, and he has a coat. Joseph. Now Mary, and like this is where it's so weird. Nobody looks up the names. Mary means revenge. Revenge. So revenge is promised to the Republic. But before revenge could marry this Republic who she was promised to, the spirit of humanity impregnated her with a miracle and created a son of man, Jesus, Joshua, the conqueror. Now, Jesus never claims to be the Son of God. He is crucified, he's killed, he's arrested, he's tried, he's convicted of being a Son of God. If you just think on the terms I've just said, Son of God would mean Son of humanity, Son of the people. Something like, and if you're thinking of son as a government, it would almost be like a populist type thing. It would be like if you have Republicans and Democrats, it would be like the people more than like a republic would be more of a representative, and a democracy is direct rule. The communism is direct. It's so he was accused of being a mob uprising. But he claimed he was the Son of Man. Now, man represents a nation, and specifically a government of society, of civilization. So he was a son of society. Right? That's who he was. He was more than just mob rule. He was like the highest level of civilization, of like, and we'll get into this. As you can see, revenge was promised to the Republic. That story is so gigantic. That is like Star Wars. That's so many stories. But let's talk about republics. Where do republics come from? They come from Greece and Athens. And then it came to Rome, who was the republic. But after a great war, it became an empire. And that empire was now had conquered all of the old republics, so that republics became a thing of the past, and they were all absorbed into the new empire. Now, I'm going to go off on another limb. In addition to some kind of people rule and capitalism, Joseph also represents Egypt. And what I've discovered in my little journey is that Egypt, we all think of pharaohs and the dead. But I'm going to flip all that on its head. Because if you start understanding these words, suddenly like a whole thing, like number one, Egypt is not even what the Egyptians called themselves. It's a Greek word. They call themselves Misraim, Kemet. There's different. There appears to be some level of republicanism and democracy that is Egypt, if you look at it from the right point of view. And I'm going to go off and say, like, I'm actually going to make the controversial claim that democracy is republicanism. Like this, it's a very Egyptian idea. But that's for another day. But if we just stick with the Greeks and the Romans are now conquered. The Greek and the Roman republics are now fully embedded into the Roman Empire. And I'm going to make another very bold, very like get me shot in the street kind of predict claim. The Jews of the Bible are in fact not talking about the Jewish people as we know them. If you go and study the Jewish people, it's a weird one. You'll get lost immediately and everything stops about 200 BC. And there is nothing past that. It is a black hole. There's just theories and rumors and stuff but there's evidentially it just stops. I mean, from there forward, sure, there is definitely some form of Jewish people and Jewish culture and Jewish world. And I'm going to say, and I'll have to go way deep on this one day, but just to argue what we're just starting with the birth of Jesus, or the setup, the conception of Jesus, is Jewishness is in some ways some kind of strange, and it's like they forgot too, like Christians have forgotten all of what I'm going to explain to you. I think the Jewish people have no idea. They have forgotten as well. And so there was like a underpinning, a current. In fact, Jewish people are two things, but one is like Judaism, Judah, and Judah is the lion. He's one of the 12 tribes. So Judah is always like the leader, the king, the lion, the lion king, the king of the jungle. Like Judah represents sort of elite mentality. And simultaneously, and I don't know how this works yet, it seems to represent some form of like Greek culture. Greek culture is interesting, but so the Jews unwittingly somehow actually sort of kept and continued Greek thought in many ways, and that's who they really were. And it became almost like a Hellenistic mindset where the Hellenes, they were strangely like if you were Greek, you were a citizen, but if you were not a Greek, you were their slave, and you were like less. You were a less human than a Greek, and there was nothing greater than a Greek. They were cultured, and they knew all these information, and they knew how to run civilization. And in many ways, what did the Jews become? They became a separate people that thought of themselves as the chosen people, but they knew banking, and they knew like taxation, and like there was always a court Jew, so they carried on the knowledge of the functioning of civilization, and they kept to themselves. But there's sort of like if you had to boil down, like if they had a downside, it's sort of like this strange, they are the chosen people of God. But what is a king, right? If you're Judah, the king is the so it's like a weird hybrid. Jesus came from the Jews. Jesus is of this Greek world that wanted revenge on the Romans. He was promised Mary, promised revenge. But God, the spirit of humanity, manifested before they could pull it off, before the Greeks, before the Hellenistic revenge could ever be enacted. Another system was born out of nowhere out of like this movement of like people. Jesus is the product of that. This first revenge, this actual realized revenge against the Romans. And what group that you could call, like, if God is humanity, then God almost always manifests as like as like a it's like a people movement. Like, what group of almost uncivilized people took revenge on the Romans and then gained some great thing from that, inherited all of the Roman wealth and power and lands? That would be the barbarians. And it's from that Jesus was born. And that's the exact same story that I said John the Baptist comes out of. It is literally the story of Ezekiel. You want to know about Ezekiel's wheels, and it's a crazy story that is talking about the rise of barbaric tribes decimating the Roman world. And I'm just laying the groundwork. So Jesus then, he's born, but then Herod tries to kill him. Now, Herod would be another man, but who is Herod? Now, we think of Herod as this very specific. Herod's another one. I think there might be 3 or 4 Herods in the Bible, but if you think of Herod as like the king of the Jews. Now, but I just said the Jews are also kind of like Greeks. They're like Greeks with kings. They have all like the Greek philosophy without the democracy. But they have, like, Joseph is democracy, but Herod is like Greek monarchy. Greek Jewishness, Greek kingship, Jewish Greeks, King Greeks, King Greek Romans. King Greek Romans would be Byzantines. So the Byzantines were out to kill all the newborn men. Boys. Now, what are boys? Boys are new groups, new nations, new people groups, new governments, new affiliations that could, because they had heard that one of those was going to try to become the king. Like, that's so like many epics have the same setup. So the Greeks, the Byzantines, they were worried about all these upstart kingdoms. They were trying to kill them all and take them all out and keep them from ever becoming a threat to their empire. That's what empires do, is they look for threats and they take them out. This empire is named Herod. When you read the Bible and you see Herod, know that you are speaking of Greek Roman Empire, Byzantine. The Eastern Empire is Herod. And it'll make way more sense when you think about it all. Where it's some form of them. Some form of that let's just stick with that one. So when the Western Empire, little kingdoms were popping up after the fall of the Western Empire, there was like constant fighting between the Byzantines and those people. Constant. And the Byzantines were always on the cusp of bad things. Like it was a battle, constant back and forth battle. And there was like, well, it's history, but there's moments when it like goes better for them and it goes worse for them. And ultimately, they had to start reaching out to people like Charlemagne and Pepin the Short and like the early Frankish kings were like initially called in to help. And in fact, it was the Byzantines and the Romans that kind of were using Charlemagne's newfound power to. That's when they called him the Holy Roman Emperor, but that was like an affront to the Byzantine. So they had to like. I'm getting too far ahead. So Jesus must come from this barbaric root, this Germanic barbaric root. Now John the Baptist came before baptizing and making the way. And I have 2 or 3 videos on John the Baptist. In fact, I even say in that the age of Jesus is from Charlemagne to Napoleon. And you can see now where I'm getting my thinking. But Jesus was not Charlemagne. He was not John the Baptist. John the Baptist was not fit. But yet, in 800, Charlemagne was crowned the Holy Roman Emperor. But that was sort of like an honorary title, and it died with him. And then there was this wilderness. So almost immediately, there's a wilderness. And a wilderness means no civilization. So upon, like, one of the first things that happens is Jesus flees for his life, which the Eastern Romans did attempt to destroy the barbaric tribes. He had to flee. And then when he was older, he began his life. He's in the wilderness, being tempted by the mountaintop, being tempted by the devil, being tempted by bread. So what were the actual temptations? Temptations were power, men power, and essentially. And he rejected all those. And then with the rejection, he was baptized by John the Baptist. But then the dove ascended upon him, and John said, I must become lesser, and he must become greater. So we can take the John the Baptist, Holy Roman Emperor concept, and there's like literally all the stories tell this. So I'm just trying to give you like a reduced version, but essentially, one could argue that the Holy Roman Empire is the heart of Europe. Now, Charlemagne is the father of Europe, but the Holy Roman Empire was the beating heart that held Europe together for 1,000 years under feudalism and under chivalry. So if Jesus is anything, he's 2 things, right? Because if you go asking any preacher in America or the world, he would say, what is Jesus? Is he a man or is he God? And he would say, he's God made flesh. Well, to be made flesh, it means you have to be a man. So in the story, right, they're telling you the story. So the story is he's a man. But in the definition of man, it means he's a country. So it means the spirit of humanity became a country that gathered disciples and reigned for 1,000 years. Like that's the story. But at the end, he was betrayed, killed. Like Jesus is, in effect, King Arthur. Well, I mean, Jesus is two things. He's spiritual and he's physical. That's important to understand. Like, that's not contradicting Christianity, that's embracing the basic tenets. Spiritual, physical. This is where it became like it took me literally 3 years of just being like, I could see this and I could see this, and I didn't see how they married, and it took a long time to go, oh, it's both things. So the physical manifestation of God is the Holy Roman Empire. The spiritual manifestation of God is not Christianity. In fact, this is where it becomes strange. Christianity, I don't really know what the fuck Christianity is. I have no idea. Like, it's almost just like a weird cult that got in the way of this. If you understand, like, it is the Pharisees. Christianity in the story is the Pharisees that were always being. Jesus was always like, bah. We think it was all like the shitty Jewish leaders. And it was like, it's actually talking about all the shitty Christian leaders. And it becomes painfully obvious when you understand it from a certain point of view. So just think of them as more like they were the spiritual leaders, and they were the literary, like they were the intelligentsia of the Middle Ages, is the church. Well, there's no getting around that. In fact, to kind of, because what Jesus is Jesus is this ideal that held the realm together. Like in the King Arthur myth, it's the once and future king. Like, it's this idea of something that was great and it will be great, right? Like, Jesus is this ideal that is above reality. So when you're creating a civilization, the number one thing you can do is create the bar, so that whenever a decision needs to be made, or people's, like, as things go, you want to be that. And that's kind of what you do when you accept Jesus into your heart, is you accept this new ideal. Jesus is perfect. Everything about Jesus is perfect. He's a perfect version of all of this. As of flesh, not so much. So Jesus is the ideal of the good king, protecting the people. He manifests as the nation, even though we're the region of the Holy Roman Empire. His culture was twofold, and this is where it gets even stranger. So, in the story of Genesis, I told you that Genesis represents the ages of mankind from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Joseph. And Joseph, I said, was like American republicanism and like the move towards democratic ways and away from monarchies, the European monarchies. And the European monarchies were all based on Rome, right? So Rome is essentially Rome continues as like the whole point of Charlemagne is to revive Rome. Like the Russians were always thinking they were the third Rome. Like it was all Hitler was essentially trying to keep Rome alive. Like Rome is the thread of the Middle Ages. They were always trying to be that. So Jacob is Rome and then Europe before the democratic. Hence, Charlemagne to Napoleon is Israel. Jacob would be Rome, changes his name, Israel, Europe. Now, what you have to remember is Jacob had two wives. One he loved, and Leah, who he had to marry, who had weak eyes. And he had to marry the first one before he finally got the second one he always wanted. And she only ever gave him one son, well, two sons. So all the other ones came from this woman. So you can see right now, I can just stop and say, I'm trying to tell you about Jesus on earth. And all of a sudden, I'm talking about Joseph. I'm talking about Jacob. I'm talking about Israel. I'm talking about Jews. I'm talking about Mary. Like, it's all together. Hence the reason the names, regardless of the book they're in, and if you understand the words and what they mean, it makes total sense. And if you don't, I sound like a fucking maniac. Like, those aren't the stories. That was thousands of years. How are you just Joe? I know what I'm supposed to think. I just think it's wrong. I also think it's true. It's my story. I'm going to tell how I want it. But if you're following me, one of them had weak eyes. One of them, and if you just look into them, so basically, Leah with the weak eyes is the woman, the culture. She's the weak culture of Rome. She's Christianity, and he had to get it first. And his sons were Reuben and Simon, and there's like 6 of them. If I showed you who they were and what countries they were and geographically what they were, just know that Reuben and Peter are the same person. Simon I feel like there's Simon in it. So just break this down. So I'm gonna have to kind of build this because there is Simon, and then there's Peter, and there's there's several names that you just in fact, I'm already over time. There's no way you remember any of this, but just Peter is Italy. He was the first. The first of Rome is the Italian peninsula. Then there was Simon. Simon is the Greek, Turkey, like he's like the Eastern Roman chunk. Levi becomes Judea, I think. It's a complicated one. I'd have to go look up. Right now, I'm just going off memory. But definitely Simon and Peter James and John. John is always France, James, Spain. Interestingly enough, there's always James the Greater and James the Lesser. Nobody knows why. But those represent the first four disciples. Doom, 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 doom. If you really understand as he was collecting them, those are the sons of thunder, or France and Spain. That is the original. Well, many things. It was the old Gauls, the old Rome, and it was the first area of the barbaric kingdoms. Then there's the so I'm gonna stop now and gather my thoughts, but you see how unbelievably complicated this is. The goal was to make this like 4 minutes. Jesus is the Son of Society, and the Son of Society was the ideal that ran the world that you would all strive to be. On one end, it's Jesus, and on another end, it's chivalry. It's King Arthur. It is this ideal, right? It is chivalry that changed the world. Chivalry and Christianity at the same time. But chivalry was almost reserved exclusively for the elites. Christianity was almost exclusively for the people. 2 wives. There are 2 wives. One he had to have, Christianity, and one he wanted, chivalry. You understand me? That is what Europe was. It was both women, both cultures. One of those cultures gave him one son. And that son held together Europe. And you know what happened when that son fell apart and started acting? That thing fell, and we had 2 giant world wars in this shit we're looking at now. So that thing is no joke. It was also this thing that was unconquerable by Rome. What good thing comes from Nazareth in the north? North of what? North of the Roman Empire. What good thing can come from the Germans? Like, as you look at it, you just have to take the Jews and tell them, we'll be back. We're going on our own little trip. It's nothing against Jewish people. I don't know what Christianity is. I don't know what actual Jew, like, you can see where they come from, and then you can see what they are, and you can go, I don't fucking get this shit.